Thanks for having you.
Yeah.
All right, so quickly, we want to get to know who you are. You are practicing as an accountant in Canada today. So we want to know your academic background from Nigeria, your first experience as an accountant, and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ikenna Nduaguibe. I'm an accountant, started like any other person, primary, secondary school in Maryland Comprehensive, and I got admitted into Yaba College of Technology, where I read accountancy and finance. Then later on, I got admission into Babcock University a few years after that to study also accounting and finance. I'm a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Passed the exams in 2009, so that's about 12 years from now. I'm currently a member of the Certified Chartered Public Accountants of Canada. I am planning to write the final exams to become inducted in September 2022. There's obviously a very big difference between writing exams when you're an undergraduate and writing professional exams when you're married with 2 kids and you have a full-time job. So it's different, but it's fun. My experience has been largely in accounting. That has been practically the only thing I've done, right from when I graduated from school. I initially had some experience working as an intern because when you attend a polytechnic in Nigeria, after your OND, there's a 1-year break before your HND. And during that 1-year break, I worked with PwC in Nigeria. I worked within the HR unit. It was very helpful, very useful, very relevant experience. After that, I worked within a bank in Oceanic. I think that's important to mention. I worked as a cash and teller, so receiving and paying money. So you can start from anywhere and actually go anywhere. I had to leave the job to go back to school because I felt there was more for me in front than where I was. And I remember being told, you're already earning, I think it was 38,000 I was earning then. And someone said, there are a lot of graduates who are not even earning this much. Why are you going back to school? It doesn't make any sense. And I told them, I'm sorry, you don't know where I'm coming from. I've seen people earn a lot of money, by finishing school. So I'm not going to restrict myself, which goes back to what I'll always say about the environment you're in. It's very, very important. If you're in a rundown environment, whether you like it or not, there's a good chance that that environment is going to affect you. So I went back to school, graduated from school. I got a job in SDEM Erectus during my NYSC period, and I got retained by them. And that was in June, but in September of 2011, I resigned. 2011 or 2010. I finished in 2010, sorry. September of 2010, I resigned. I joined PwC, and I worked within the oil and gas unit in PwC. I continued to work there until 2015 February, when one of the partners asked me if I was interested in working in the UK. And I remember then my wife was in the US having our first son. So my first question was, is there any opportunity in the US? And he said, do you want it or not? So I'll give it to someone else. And I told him I was interested. So went ahead with the interviews, prepared for it. It wasn't guaranteed because it was a firm opportunity. So it was a firm within PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. There was an opportunity for you to move from one country to another after going through some interviews and processes. And it wasn't guaranteed because a few people, did not get it. So I prepared for the interviews. I did the interviews. I passed. And in October of 2015, I resumed in PwC in the UK.
Let me ask. Yeah. Would you say that your being a chartered accountant early on helped with securing a job with PwC, or you came in at an entry level where it didn't?
Oh no, I did not come in at entry level. Now with PwC, if you're chartered, you come in at the second level. If you are not chartered, you come in at entry level. So there were friends of mine who joined at the same time with me, but they started at the entry level while I started at the second level because I was chartered. I mean, they didn't lose anything because the firm literally paid for their studies and gave them a handsome amount when they passed the exams. But the difference was that I didn't have to take time off work, and I could actually focus. And the truth is, when you're an undergraduate, you're not thinking of anything else. You're not thinking of work. You're not thinking of, you don't have as many responsibilities as when you actually start working full time. And there are few, one of my friends, very good friend of mine, he failed an exam. And I remember him telling me, how can I fail an exam? And I know because he was like the best graduating student in our set, but it's not easy when you have a full time job. So if you can get it done before you get out of school or before you secure full-time employment, that's fine. I mean, don't put securing full-time employment on hold because you're trying to get, pass exams and stuff. But yeah, it was very good for the UK program. If you're not qualified, you're not going to go. So you had to be a chartered accountant from somewhere, or else you are not going to get considered. So I got into the UK in October 2015, and I was in Aberdeen, which was one of the oil and gas centers of excellence in PwC. There are about 14 of them all over the world. I was there because my experience is mainly in oil and gas accounting. I was there for 2 years between 2015 and 2017. Worked on a number of clients, some large clients. Worked on Shell. In my experience, I've also worked on ExxonMobil, Chevron, some medium sized, some large sized oil and gas companies, some local indigenous oil and gas companies as well. I also worked on John Wood Group, which is a massive construction company that got acquired in the year that I returned to Nigeria. And I think the experience I gained in the UK was very, very relevant. Part of the things that helped me there was being able to settle in quite quickly. And that was because, I mean, when I got into the UK on a Sunday, by Tuesday uh, we're in London for training, 2 days. Then after that training, headed to Aberdeen in Scotland, where I was going to be working for the next 2 years. So I got there on a Tuesday night. In the office on Wednesday, I was told that there was a football game coming up that weekend, and I said I was interested, and that was going to be in another city in in Edinburgh. And I told them I was interested. Got on the train. We played soccer there. It was good, and that was a good way to break in because now people met me, saw me outside of work, and that's one thing that helps a lot, especially when you move into a new environment. People want to meet you outside of work, know the type of person that you are. Nigerians, in my experience, try to stay and move with themselves. Um, it's good, but it's not the best. You're probably better off meeting new networks, meeting new people, making new connections. And the more people are different from you, the more variety you have in your life. And when people meet you outside of work, they get to appreciate you for who you are. And that's why there are a lot of social events, not social events like, your Owambe, where you just go to eat rice and stuff, but social events where for most of the time people are trying to network. What do you do? What type of experience do you have? And that serves you very well down the line. So when people meet you in social circles, it affects a lot when, they meet you in a professional circle, they have a connection with you, feel they've met you already. So that helped me a lot to settle in the UK for the first few months and years. I mean, my experience there was like I was traveling to London from Aberdeen at least 10 times in a year to go get either training or get work done. And it was very good. It was very useful. And I also was involved in trainings. I handled trainings for first year, second year, and third years in London, in Glasgow, and in Edinburgh. So I was very actively involved in facilitating trainings for our people. So it was very helpful experience, moving over to the UK. I was working mainly oil and gas clients, and if I remember, there was the initial feel of I'm coming into a new country, I'm coming into a Western country that's probably farther ahead, not probably, that's definitely farther ahead than we are in Nigeria. And the initial feel was, you know what, let me take a back seat and see how people are doing here. But I think it helped that the people I worked with kind of trusted the work I was doing, and I had to take responsibility very early. And then I realized that the number of people I was working, because I was leading a number of teams, I was a team leader, and I could see that a number of people were actually leaning on me and they needed to learn, and I had the experience. And I'd say don't underrate or underestimate the experience you get in Nigeria and think when you get abroad, you have to start afresh completely. That's not true. There's a very good chance that the things that you're learning or that you know back in Nigeria or back in Africa or wherever you are as relevant wherever you find yourself. So I was handling trainings, I was a facilitator. I did trainings in Glasgow, in London, and in Edinburgh. In the UK, I was a facilitator for our first year, second year, third year staff. So very quickly, I was able to get into, settle and, hit the ground running. And once you make yourself available, people start to trust you more and they get to see what you're able to do. And I think one other challenge our guys have is when you get there, you don't know how to associate yourself socially. You're looking for other Nigerians to associate with. I don't think that's the best. I try to avoid it where I can. I got into the UK on, I think, a Sunday in London, finished training by Tuesday. I was in Aberdeen, and Wednesday I was in the office, and on Wednesday I was told that there was a football game on Saturday in Edinburgh, and I told them I was interested. And from there they got to see me outside of work, and that's one thing I've seen. People want to see you outside of work and know who you really are, and it allows them trust you better. And that just made it very easy for me to settle in, because I'd met a number of people in a social environment, and that just made it very easy to get get a lot of things done. My experience in the UK was very, very, very good, and I came back to Nigeria in October 2017 afterwards.
Okay, so you are now in Canada. You are practicing in Canada. So can you tell us what your journey was like from Nigeria to Canada? I understand that you now work with KPMG, no longer PwC. The first experience outside the country was an exchange program, kind of, an internal arrangement within PwC. But this one, you had to resign from PwC, I believe, and then applied to get a job in Canada, and then migrated and all that. Could you just walk us through this process? You an accountant, you were a chartered accountant in Nigeria and all that. An accountant in Nigeria who's just finished school, who perhaps may be chartered already because many people chartered while in school, who is looking to migrate and all that. So just use as an opportunity to guide the person all the way through.
So my journey actually started in December of 2016 while I was in the UK. I'd eaten the fruit and I didn't want to go back. I knew my stay in Nigeria, in the UK, was going to be only 2 years and I'd have to go back to Nigeria. So, I was keen on going back to Nigeria because that was the agreement, but not everyone who went on that program did. So I started researching on other countries that I could migrate to, and my interest was piqued in Australia. And that was where all of my efforts went into. It was difficult because I remember doing an interview all night long from 10 p.m. till 7 a.m. trying to get into Deloitte in Australia back then because the time difference was just ridiculous. They needed us to do a video. They had the questions, do a video, record yourself and send over. And I just wanted to make sure it was perfect. So I kept doing it over and over and over again. And I did that all night until 7 a.m. It didn't work out with Australia. Then I started the whole process with coming to Canada. And back then, and I think it's the same as now, you can actually get to Canada as a permanent resident from wherever you are in the world. There are some criteria which you can find on their website, but I think the main ones are your age, your English proficiency, and if you have at least 2 or more degrees. Now, 2 or more degrees can be OND and HND, OND and BSc, can be BSc and ACCA. It can be for someone who is an accountant. A lot of people avoid ATS, but that ATS is actually considered as 1 degree. Now, that ATS and your BSc or ATS and your HND is a degree, and that counts for you. So if you have a master's, that also counts more than 2 degrees. If you have a PhD, even better. So I started the whole process by myself, and I got the PR in March. I submitted my forms in March of 2018 and got approved in April of 2018. And I started looking for a job in Canada right from there. I remember a number of companies were not interested. And in my head, I'd ask, like, can't you guys see I'm the best thing since sliced bread? Of course, they didn't care until I reached out to PwC. I did an interview in PwC with PwC and with KPMG. And after I had the interview, I was told that when I come physically into Canada, that I'll meet with a partner. And the moment I heard that, I resigned the next day because I knew, okay, now this is looking real. But before then, I'd gotten an offer from Ernst & Young in Newfoundland, and it didn't work out. In hindsight, I have no complaints actually, because I'm happy working here in Calgary, Canada. But I resigned. I told my boss I was going to resign in April. I gave them about 6 months notice just so that I wanted to be as upfront with them as possible. And I know that getting an experienced manager replacement would take at least 3 months. So I gave them 6 months notice that I was going to resign, even though I'd never put in my paper. But then I think it was when I was leaving in October that I actually now formally resigned, but they already knew I was leaving. I got to Calgary and I had the interview. I got to Calgary on a Sunday, and I'd also applied to PwC in Halifax, and I had the interview in PwC on the Monday after I arrived in Canada. That worked out well. I got an offer from PwC in Halifax. I also got an offer from KPMG. I got 2 offers in the space of 1 week, and there was over $20,000 difference between the two. So that made my choosing very simple. And personally, I wanted to try something else with KPMG. I wanted to try something else. It was going to be tough, but that was what I wanted to do, and that's how I joined KPMG in December of 2018. That was when I resumed. Now, if you're looking to start, the advice that you start getting familiar with IELTS. You'd need 3 years experience. That's, I think, the minimum to get the most marks. You need 3 years experience. The prime age is between 28 and 32. That's when you want to take the most advantage of where you are, because at that age range, you get the most points, and it makes a big difference. If you get a good score in your IELTS, that's also fantastic. And with the right experience, if you have 2 or more degrees, I've tried to explain how that works. That also works really well. If you have a master's, that's also very good. Getting into Canada, you'd get a number of opportunities, and you just have to watch who you move with. I don't think it's just Canada. I think it's everywhere. There are people who tell you everything that does not work about wherever it is you are, and there are people who tell you things that work. I have experience of people who have come into Canada. Some people, I'm in a group. I'm in a group where we help people who want to convert from ICANN to CPA, and most of the time people are coming in with not the best stories, especially about getting jobs. And because I know a number of examples of people who have gotten very good jobs, earning over 120,000 with just ICANN, I know that those opportunities are there. When I came into Canada, someone actually, did not know I already had an offer on the table. And the person told me, when I explained my experience to him, he said I should tear my certificates, throw them away, and look for a job in a grocery store and start from there. and get the Canadian experience. And I just said, thank you, because I mean, that might be the route some people came in through, and that might be the way they know. And sometimes that's what they'll try to push to you. But I know someone who got into Canada and got a job, the $140,000 straight from Nigeria. I know a number of people who get jobs from Nigeria. They're still in Nigeria, they get paid to move and everything. It happens, right? You just have to be careful that you're not listening to the wrong things. And there are a lot of people that will tell you the wrong things. I'd always tell people that if a foreigner comes to Nigeria, they will not look for a job in ShopRite or in Game or in Eban or any of our big grocery stores. They will look for a job in the best possible places. So I don't see why we should move over to another country when you have the competence and be looking to start from somewhere that definitely does not meet your experience. So if you're looking to move, there's so much information out there. Some people use agents. I would say use an agent when your case is peculiar. If your case is not, I did everything myself. Like I did the whole process, I did it myself. And there's a lot of help online. There are a number of WhatsApp groups. There are people online that provide help if you're interested. They provide the information. But ultimately, it rests on you to find out what you need to know to go about the process. And if you check, you're going to find out. And that way you don't get scammed. I have a friend who paid £8,000 to an agent who practically didn't do anything. And when he asked for a refund, they didn't give him back. He ended up doing the process completely by himself and he was fine, but then he had thrown away £1,000. So if your case is not peculiar, maybe your age is not really high or something like that, then I'd say go about the process yourself. A number of people are moving to Canada right now through schooling, but it's not cheap. It's very expensive. You'd be looking at upwards of 10 million naira, and that doesn't even include your ticket or anything else. And living expenses is also going to be quite high. Now, when you consider that you could actually move over to Canada or to the UK and get a job on day one, you might want to take that option. There's probably something else a friend of mine told me when we were leaving the UK. And I think he's been a bit of a prophet because he said he was trying to get into Australia as well and it wasn't working. And he told me he wasn't in a hurry to migrate because there were only 3 of us who went back to Nigeria after the program. And he told me something that's actually come true. He said, eventually, countries are going to be battling for talent. Like countries are going to be struggling for talent. And that's exactly what is happening right now in the UK, in Australia, in Canada, all over the world. Countries are going to be doing that. So you need to position yourself to be relevant, look for skills that are not restricted to your local area. Try to be relevant beyond where you currently are. And you'd be surprised at who'd be willing to pay for you to come over. Unlike in Nigeria, where they'd ask you for 100 years of experience and all of that stuff, nobody really asks about that here. It's more of competence. If you are competent enough, you'll get the job. It's not just your certificates or your paper that you carry around. Some people feel once I have a degree, that's all. No, you need to be competent. So beyond getting a degree, you need to actually be competent to get the job done. And if you're competent, you will always get something to do and it will be worth your while. But if you're not, then you're going to struggle.
So it's even advisable while in Nigeria to get a job, get something doing, practice the craft, have hands-on experience, so that because you grow the competence, while doing.
Yes.
So it's important that somebody gets busy, learn, even though the pay may not be fantastic, but the key is to learn.
Yeah. Now, when you say that, I remember when I was doing my NYC, I was earning 25,000 a month. And I felt very bad because that was a period where I actually qualified. And to put it into perspective, as an intern in 2005, I was earning 30,000. So to now graduate, be doing NYC and be earning 25,000, I felt, and then I'd become a chartered accountant, I felt Am I moving forward or am I moving backwards? And at that point, I was quite bitter, and it was coming across in my attitude while I was working, even though it didn't affect the quality of my work, but it was coming across in my attitude. And, God has a way of doing things. A few years into my stay in PwC, there was a secondment to one of our big oil and gas clients. And three of us put in applications to go on that 6 month secondment. It was going to be in budgeting. And I was least qualified, but I was the one that got the position. And one day, the manager in that unit said the only thing that piqued their interest was the experience I gained while I was doing my NYC. So at the point where I felt I was at my lowest, that was actually where I got the experience that gave me that opportunity. And it was fantastic because it was around that period I met my wife. Because if I was working completely in consulting, I'm not sure I'd have been able to meet her at that time because we work really late nights, even though she feels I kind of deceived her a bit. That was something that kind of struck me because I felt that the experience I felt like my boss was just being difficult unnecessarily with asking me to do that reconciliation. But a few years down the line, that was what made the difference between someone like me who had 3 years experience and people who had 11 years experience, doing almost something similar to what the company was looking for. So yeah, if you get good money, that's fine. But if you're getting good experience, that's better. It would serve you well later on in your career.
Now, when migrating, what impact does HND have? Do we have any discrimination overseas
No,
with
no,
HND, BSc as we have in Nigeria?
no, not really. Funny enough, my office never knew I had the BSc because I finished my HND in 2008. Then I started the BSc in 2012, finished in 2014. As a matter of fact, if you have a OND and HND, you're actually better off than someone that has a BSc if you're trying to migrate.
But it's seen as 2 degrees.
Exactly. Your OND is 1 degree, your HND is another degree, that's 2, but your BSc is just 1.
I think we should allow this. We should allow this so that people who are in polytechnics do not think that, because that is important.
Yes, it's true. It's true because, while I was in HND, I knew people who were in OND too, and I passed ICANN. Because again, you get very technical experience, you're very hands-on. When we got to the university, the learning was quite different. I think people are trained for different things in a technical college versus in university. So depending on what your line of work is going to be, you might want to consider where you want to get the best education. For some courses, you're probably better off going to a polytechnic than going to a university, but you also have to be realistic and consider the environment where you are. If you're going to be in Nigeria long term, it's advisable you get a BSc irrespective. But if you're looking to go outside, you probably want to consider where you'd get the best education, because when you get that education, nobody's going to take it away from you. And especially if you have the experience, then that makes a lot of difference.
All right, I think that's about that. I believe that anybody who listens to this, of course, anybody can also schedule a call with you if the person wants to ask some more personal questions. But I think that you've captured basically what anybody who needs to migrate and get a job overseas as an accountant needs to know. Any final words?
I'll say don't limit yourself. I'll say watch out for people who have a negative mindset. There are a lot of them. Watch out for those people. Don't limit yourself. Look for the companies you want to work in and send your applications there. Don't say because I'm coming from either Nigeria or somewhere in Africa, nobody would want to listen to me. You'd be surprised at the people that be interested in what you have and what you know. There's a very strong chance that you're not placing the right premium on the knowledge that you have, and you're limiting yourself, and that's probably because of the environment that you're in. So do not place any limits on yourself. Don't think there are things you can't achieve, Don't allow anybody look down on you because you have what it takes. And the environment you're in makes a very big difference. Probably end with the story I saw this morning of a violinist who was playing in the New York subway. He got $30 in tips for playing for a few hours. What people did not know was that he had sold out a large theater and the cheapest ticket there was $100. And because he just disguised, wore a cap, people did not know he was playing with a violin worth $1.5 million. But since he was in the subway, people felt, yeah, he wasn't really worth much. Your environment makes a big difference. If you feel you're not getting what you need in the environment you are, there is a very strong competition for talent abroad. Look abroad, you'll get something. If you do, move on. If you feel that where you are is the best bet for you, that's fine. But don't limit yourself in any way.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.